Paint Care is all about keeping it simple for Oregonians. They make recycling leftover paint easy with convenient locations like your local paint store. And Paint Care has 3 simple rules for painting smarter and reducing waste. 1, you buy the right amount of paint for the job. 2, you use up what's left. And 3, recycle the rest. And you can do that by visiting paintcare.org/3 simple rules to learn more or find a paint drop-off site near you. Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about voter registration woes at the DMV, how poorly our state lawmakers are paid, and the ballot initiative that wants to change that. Plus, New York City is yet again salty about Portland, and this time they're mad at our ice cream. And joining me on this week's Friday News Roundup, our CityCast Director of Digital Strategy, Bryan Vance, and our very own executive producer, John Notarianni. It's Friday, October 11th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Welcome, everyone, to the Friday News Roundup. Bryan of Montevilla, John of St. John's. Thank you for hanging out with me this morning.
Hey, Claudia.
Hey, Claudia, also of St. John's.
Well, in addition to crushing our member campaign goal, also just thank you to everyone who joined. You'll be getting something soon in your inbox welcoming you to the CityCast family, but we also just gained nearly 5,000 new listeners, which is amazing. So high fives to everyone listening to the show right now for the first time. Today is the day we break down some of the biggest local stories of the week with some of the best and brightest journalists in town. And before we jump into the news, I usually ask an opening question so our listeners can get to know our guests a little better. But since we are a daily podcast and have so many new listeners, there's a high probability that some of you are still catching up. So if you didn't get a chance to check out this week's show, John and I are going to quickly fill you in on what you missed. This is also for all of our regular listeners who kind of just drop in on Friday, which is totally fine.
Yeah. So on Monday, we talked with a mushroom foraging expert who had tips for how to successfully forage now that it's mushroom season, also how to avoid poisoning your loved ones.
That's a key tip right there.
Yeah.
I think you also got a secret special spot.
We did, but we had to bleep it out because we had to protect the secret foraging spot.
So
we know, but unfortunately, we can't share.
Okay, on Tuesday, we talked about some of the measures that are going to be on your ballot this November with KBOO News Director and frequent Roundup guest, Althea Billings. I don't know if you guys know this, but in my prep docs, Julia refers to her as all-around funny gal, Althea Billings. I don't know why.
Amazing.
I just love that.
And very knowledgeable. Yeah, I learned a lot from that interview.
Incredibly tuned into what's happening.
Yeah.
Also learned a lot from Jack Rudo, who we talked to on Wednesday. He's the founder of the horror fanzine, The Stapled Spine. We sort of talked about Oregon horror culture, the sort of weird and creepy things that are happening this month, as well as some like Oregon celebrities and like film and music recommendations. I didn't realize how many scary movies were shot here in Oregon until we talked with Jack.
Yeah, and yesterday we talked about some of the best sandwiches in Portland with Willamette Week and Portland Mercury food writer Andrea Damewood. And we had actual clips of listeners sharing their favorite sandwiches in town. And personally, I kind of love those episodes when we get to hear from you. But all of this brings me to our opening question. After chatting with Jack Rudo about all the scary movies filmed in Oregon, I kind of just got to Googling because I was like, what else? What other movies can I watch? And came across a Today Show segment where they allegedly found out what every state in America thinks is the scariest movie. Absolutely no metrics that I found that they used. So like, I don't know if this was streaming data or just like a BuzzFeed quiz or like, I don't know. So grain of salt, folks. But can you guess what Oregon's supposed pick was?
I'm going to guess it's actually not that scary.
It was 2007's Paranormal Activity.
Okay. Okay.
Just going through the West Coast picks, California had The Exorcist, which is respectable. And Washington had what I think is the only acceptable answer, Hereditary. So our opening question is, if you had to pick a new top scary movie for Oregon, what would it be and why? And you don't have to pick a traditional horror movie. If you need some time to think, I can go first, but If you're ready to roll, go for it.
One is very weird. I saw it earlier this year. It's actually like a British film, but there's a Portland tie-in here in that the movie's called Stop Motion, and it's about a stop motion animator who's like haunted by her creations. You know, Oregon is the capital of stop motion animation. It is weird. Totally worth a watch if you can find it somewhere. I don't know. I think like everyone needs to see this movie that actually just came out this year. Yes, I know I'm pulling from this year, but I'll be honest. I think 2024 was an amazing year for it. Oddity.
Huh.
I'm not even going to try to describe it. Just if you see it, if you get a chance to see it, watch it. I promise you it'll be the most terrifying thing you've seen this year. It's amazing.
Okay. What about you, John?
My pick is a movie that was set in the Pacific Northwest from about 10 years ago. Did you guys ever see Green Room?
Oh, yeah.
Patrick Stewart, though.
It's
he
about
played
like
a big Nazi and it was so scary. Sorry, John.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I just remember that really, like that scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
I was like, Picard?
Clearly all three of us were affected by this movie. Yeah, it's about like a touring band that plays a show in like the woods in the Pacific Northwest. And then there's lots of really awful like neo-Nazis and just thinking about it makes me shiver.
Well, can I share mine?
Yeah.
So I just leaned into my own greatest fears and revulsions, and I picked 2024's highly panned biopic Reagan, which skirts all the historical accuracy of Reagan's presidency and portrays him like this true American hero. This is what's scary, is that there are young people who are going to watch this just like, whatever, and just be like, oh, that's who Reagan was? And I'm just like, no! Like, there's a scene where they credit him solely for bringing down the Berlin Wall.
Oh, yeah. You don't remember this, Claudia? He went over there with a sledgehammer and knocked it down.
And Margaret Thatcher is shown like watching it unfold. And then she remarks in this like British accent, like, well done, cowboy. It's so bad. Currently, it's like 18% in the Rotten Tomatoes rating. But I don't know. I'm just like presently just like shivers down my spine thinking that anyone would believe that movie.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, that is a pretty terrifying thought.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much again for your answers. On to the news of the week. Bryan, you're sharing a story that sounds like a very common talking point of the right, except that it actually happened.
A very unfortunately timed story, too, because I just want to preface this with saying, like, voter fraud is not rampant in Oregon. It's not rampant anywhere in America. But we did have an issue come up recently with our famed motor voter automatic voter registration policy. So it came out in late September that about 1,200 people who shouldn't have been registered to vote in Oregon were automatically registered via motor voter. I want to preface this with saying not every single one of those people were non-citizens. There are other reasons why you might not be eligible to register to vote beyond just like not being a citizen. Mm-hmm. And then this week it came out that some more people fell through the cracks. So we're up to about 1,600 people overall so far that the Oregon DMV and the Oregon Secretary of State's office has found. And Governor Tina Kotek, who initially seemed not that alarmed by the September incident, has actually paused Oregon's motor voter registration for now. And keep in mind, the deadline to register is fast approaching, though there is technically a cutoff a little bit earlier with motor voter. But it's just like really unfortunate timing for this news to come out that there are some issues with it, because what's going to happen is people are going to pick this up and they're going to say that it's more widespread than it actually is. I just want to point out some quick stats. Like I said, about 1,600 people who shouldn't have been registered to vote were registered to vote. There are over 3 million people registered in Oregon. And I think they've only found 7 instances where someone voted, like when they were, improperly registered and they actually voted. That's not like that. It sucks.
Yeah, that's not going to decide
No one's going to win an election because of those 7 people. Like, but yeah, I'm just curious, like, what was your initial reaction to this news when you saw it?
I mean, honestly, I was just expecting a flood of, Republican talking points related to the election about voter fraud and voter insecurity, because there's so much of that floating around. And like, I'm actually relatively pleased that we haven't seen this tsunami of Fox News stories about it, and like a little bit surprised on that front, but like definitely relieved.
Yeah. We seem to be flying under the national radar, at least.
Thank God.
Yeah.
I also wonder if it's because of the low number that they're just like, oh, we can't really harp on this.
I don't know.
But I was just actually wondering, because like this has been happening since 2016, not people accidentally being enrolled, but like that's when Oregon started automatically registering people to vote once they received a new or renewed license in the state. And since Oregon has long since like issued driver's license to non-citizens, including those holding green cards, I figured this would have been like a possibility, you know, when they were designing this like automatic registration in 2016, that they were just like, hey, we have to find ways for people who are not able to vote to not automatically be enrolled. So I'm just curious, you know, I read it was a clerical error, but I'm curious, like, what exactly happened? You know, like, I don't know.
And we'll find that out because they've ordered an independent audit of everything. But I will say, just to calm anyone who's nervous about this, there are checks and balances in place. It's not just that you show up, you get a license, boom, you're registered to vote. You have to provide proof of citizenship. You have to provide proof of residency because you obviously can't register to vote in Oregon if you live in Washington. And so there are checks and balances here. And I just want to commend the Secretary of State's office, the DMV, all the politicians and elected officials and, you know, bureaucrats in state government who have stepped in to address this as quickly as possible and have been so far pretty transparent about it. I could see the instincts to maybe be like, oh, it wasn't that many, let's not say anything about it, but being upfront about it. But no system's perfect.
Yeah, I was reading it. It said that initially it looks like the problem might have been an awkwardly designed drop-down menu in the DMV computer program made it easy to like check that a non-citizen had a passport or a birth certificate when they didn't. So just like real, like low-level, super simple bureaucratic computer system screw up.
The government's not good at designing software, as we all know.
I feel like if you ever take a design course, most of the nightmare, this is why we care about this shit, is always some sort of government thing.
Typically the DMV too.
Yeah. And it's because one, it's the kind of design choice that would have the biggest weight. You know, like if something happens, it's like, oh no, that was a terrible decision we made. But also in order to become a contractor, to design anything in the state government, like I'm just curious what they're looking for. Who, you know, how they decide.
The qualifications there must be very different from what you'd expect in most other parts of the world.
Whoever gives the cheapest bid. Yeah. I did get curious. Like, I was like, okay, we talk about voter fraud a lot. Like, how prevalent is it in Oregon? You know? So I actually dug in a bit and I found this review of the vote by mail system by the state's Legislative Fiscal Office. It looked at all of the incidents of voter fraud between 2000 and 2019. There had been 61 million ballots cast. Of those, it found 38 criminal convictions of voter fraud. So that amounts to 0.00006%.
It's really not an issue. And I think this just speaks to how thoroughly designed, even with this one potentially, you know, poorly designed piece of software, just how thoughtfully designed the entire process is. Like from registration to implementation to like the actual like way that we send in our ballots and stuff. And just a reminder to everyone, it was Oregon Republicans who proposed the vote by mail system. So like this is not actually a partisan issue. Voting by mail is really safe, it's really secure, and it's about access and equality, and it works.
Well, as we mentioned, there is a cutoff for motor voter registration anyways, and we've already been past that. So even without the governor's intervention here, like people are not actively getting on the rolls for this election anymore. But registration deadlines are coming up super, super quick. Next week, October 15th, is the deadline to register to vote. You can do it in person at an election office, online, by mail, if you postmark it by the 15th. But please, the election is coming. If you aren't sure if you're registered to vote yet, check it out. You still got a couple days to get into the mix.
All right, well, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, more headlines of the week. This episode of CityCast Portland is brought to you by BetterHelp. We all know October is the season for wearing masks and costumes, but some of us, we feel like we wear a mask and hide more often than we want to, like at work and social settings, around our family. But therapy can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself. People find it helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself, because masks should be for Halloween fun, not for our emotions. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, but you can also switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/CityCast today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/CityCast.
Hi, this is David Plotz of CityCast. Have you thought about a gift for yourself this year? One that has the power to help you grow and learn and become a better version of yourself? Give yourself the gift of language by getting Babbel. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by language experts, Babbel gets you talking a new language in 3 weeks, because talking is the key to really knowing a language. And that's how Babbel approaches it. It's designed for real conversation. So I have a trip to France planned with my girlfriend. Was it inspired by the Olympics? Yes, it was. And it's given me the chance to revive my old high school French. And it's so fun to catch back up with the vocabulary I'd forgotten. To remember all the food, for example. I'm in a lesson on ingredients, so I'm going to make crepes with butter and sugar. Avec sucre et de beurre salé, on va se régaler. We're going to have a feast. They learned this great new French expression too. J'en ai l'eau à la bouche. That means I have water in the mouth. That means it's mouth-watering. Love it. Love French. Anyway, Babbel gets you talking, and studies from Yale and Michigan State University and other leading universities prove that it works. So here is a special holiday deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast, spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Like we mentioned earlier this week, we looked into some of the ballot initiatives we're voting on next month, but we didn't talk about a measure that I think needs a little more attention, one that could significantly impact who we elect as lawmakers on the state level, and that is Measure 116. Measure 116 is hoping to pass an independent commission that sets the pay for statewide elected officials, including state legislatures, that's the governor, and state judges. Now, this is the language the group supporting the measure is using to explain why it's needed, and I'm going to quote it now. By addressing low pay for elected officials, it will make our government more representative and make sure everyone has a seat at the table. If you weren't aware, Oregon legislators are among the lowest paid in the country, the entire country. Only Idaho and New Hampshire pay even less. For context, Alaska pays their state lawmakers nearly triple what we pay ours. Alaska. Like I'm not saying like, oh, Alaska, what a shit.
That's that oil money, Claudia.
What are they governing out there?
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Governing polar bears?
There's more polar bears than government there is what I'm saying, and they're still paying more. So to share some numbers with you, our legislature is considered a part-time job, so it's only a base salary of about $35,000 a year. Now, that's what like generally our state reps make. If you become Speaker of the House, you make a little more, but $35K is the majority. You know, Lauren Dake at OPB has not only been tracking this measure during our election cycle, but has been reporting for years how poorly our state reps get paid. Now, I'm going to quote a passage from an article she published just last week because I think it does a great job of breaking down how being a state rep is not a part-time job. Now, Lauren wrote, lawmakers meet every February with sessions that cannot exceed 160 days in odd-numbered years and 35 days in even-numbered years. But special legislative sessions are becoming increasingly common, with lawmakers called back to Salem to tackle unfinished business at unexpected times. There are never-ending constituent demands, people desperate for help who expect unlimited access to lawmakers, and as the state grows, the budget and policy demands have also also grown. And I mean, do you think you're only able to get hold of a state rep with concerns during a legislative session? I sure as hell don't, you know? But it's not just our state reps who are getting paid very low salaries. Salaries for all statewide elected officials also remain low compared to other states. Our governor, Tina Kotek, only makes about $98,600.
That's not enough.
No. The state treasurer makes $77,000 and the attorney general makes $82,200. In comparison to our city government, the new city council district reps will be making a base salary of $133,207. But even within our state government, elected officials are often making less money than people in their staff. For example, the Oregon Secretary of State, who only earns $77,000 a year, like I mentioned, plus a $250 stipend. The Deputy Secretary of State makes about $268,000. So, like, make that make sense, you know?
I mean, being number 2 is great. That's what it is.
Well, just as a reminder, Secretary of State was what Shamia Fagan's role was before she resigned.
She cited the low pay as a reason why she was moonlighting as a consultant for a very problematic cannabis company.
Yeah, which led to her resignation from the role of Secretary of State in disgrace.
And you know what's so funny is that the Deputy Secretary of State who took over her role didn't take on her salary.
Oh, really?
No, she's still making $268,000-ish.
Damn, that's what a deal.
I know. So political watchdogs have pointed out the obvious that this low pay greatly influences not only who can afford to run, but also like the possibility that our lawmakers are needing to take on side hustles.
Yeah.
Making them even easier to corrupt with bribes. You know?
Totally.
Before I jump into the cons of the measure, like, what do you guys think?
I mean, I totally agree with what you just said, that like, okay, if it's a $35,000 base pay, who can effectively do this job? Either A, somebody who's independently wealthy, which is not going to be representative, or somebody who has some sort of relationship with some special interest group that is able to pay for the rest of their life and livelihood. I'm not saying that those people should be excluded from office, but there is like a real problem that if, you know, one of the most important leadership jobs in our state is only available to people who have some sort of John Adams-esque, fortune that they're sitting upon.
John Adams, what the hell?
That is a very
I'm just imagining like these like founding fathers like, oh, we're creating a democracy. It's like, dude, you guys are all millionaires.
So they, like search all the way back. They're like, we don't have this now. Let me explain.
We have several billionaire governors in America, and John's like, no, we're going back to
all the way to
1700s.
John Adams.
Yeah, it's I just think it's silly that we pay them so little and then get shocked when things go wrong.
Yeah. Well, for sure, pay is the reason why our state lawmakers tend to be primarily people who are either retired or of a certain hue. In fact, Lauren Dake at OPB reported that at least 3 lawmakers in 2022 declined to run for re-election because they just couldn't afford it. And all 3 were women who were in their 30s and 40s that worked outside of government as well. One was a lawyer, another was a social worker, and one was a nurse practitioner. So there are plenty of people who are just like, I really want to represent my state, but like, I'm a single mom.
I can't afford to do it. And
yeah,
we have a history of people serving in the legislature and then actually coming and serving on like city council or county council. I don't think that's a coincidence because you make more money serving a smaller group of people, which is ass backwards. It makes no sense.
Yeah. Are you ready for the cons?
Yeah.
Okay. Opponents are worried that the measure as written now is too hazy. Concerns have been raised about who this independent commission would be because, again, this measure isn't like this is how much they're going to be making or whatever. They're like, hey, let's create a commission that assigns these new salaries, right? So it's the first step. And despite the exceptions that are currently worked into the bill, the worry is that people with direct political ties, like campaign donors or former lobbyists, can still be assigned to the commission. One of the OPB articles I read about this measure quoted Oregon attorney Dan Meek, who focuses on government accountability, referring to Measure 116 as the crony commission. Meek also thinks once the commission, why can't I say commission? I want to say commission. Like, I'm like, what the fuck?
Commission.
Meek also thinks once the commission is chosen, there are very few ways to hold them accountable. And the commission's salary determinations would just be final and not subject to any oversight. So he's kind of just like ringing that alarm because as is like the legislature ends up deciding membership.
Even though I agree that, we need to pay our legislators more, this does get to the complication between doing actual legislation and Oregon's sort of buck wild ballot initiative process, because with a normal law, you debate it and you change it and you reform it before it's actually passed. Whereas with a ballot initiative, it's just all or nothing of like either everybody gets a trampoline in their backyard or not,
Yeah.
Well, I have a proposed ballot measure. Can we just put one on the ballot that says, going forward, all ballot measures need to be referred to as buck wild ballot measure, whatever the number is.
BWBM 116. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think that'd be one I'd get behind.
Is our state government suffering from too much democracy?
Yeah,
Kinda.
maybe.
Too much.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that I thought was crazy about this, we tried this before, So I was reading in the Statesman Journal, we had a commission appointed by elected officials to make salary recommendations for elected officials. It did recommend salary increases in 2008. The legislature did not adopt those recommendations. Then this commission was just inactive and it eventually disbanded in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's to say that that isn't going to just happen again?
Yeah, I looked into that. I was
Yeah.
like, why? And it's because all of state legislature is like weirdly concerned of voting for their own, like the optics of voting
Yeah,
for
I
their
get it. It's
own
weird.
money. And it's like, that's why it should be somebody else. So they're not like being told like by their constituents, like,
Mhm.
hey, you guys are like, of course, oh, now you're making $200,000. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I get why that needs to be independent of their voting,
Yeah, I don't have that problem. CityCast leadership, I believe I deserve a raise, Claudia deserves a raise, and I believe Bryan Vance deserves a raise.
Yeah.
And we're appointing John as the sole decider here.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's take another break here. And when we come back, more headlines of the week.
So, you want to be a marketer. It's easy. You just have to score a ton of leads and figure out a way to turn them all into customers. Plus, manage a dozen channels, write a million blogs, and launch 100 campaigns all at once. When that's done, simply make your socials go viral and bring in record profits. No sweat. Okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. But with HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools, launching benchmark-breaking campaigns is easier than ever. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
If your business needs a new application, then developers will have to write code. A lot of code. If an application needs to be modernized, then you'll need time, resources, and caffeine. If this sounds daunting, then use Watson X Code Assistant. Built with IBM's Granite code model, it's AI designed to multiply developer productivity so you can generate code quickly. Learn more at ibm.com/code assistant. IBM, let's create.
All right, John, what caught your eye this week?
I want to talk about the national media's harsh take on one of Portland's most important institutions. I am not talking about the Politico article that previewed our fall election. I'm talking about the New York Post's brutal takedown of Salt and Straw. So, Salt and Straw ice cream started as a food cart on Alberta Street in 2011. Of course, in recent years, they've been expanding all over the place. There's locations in California, Las Vegas, Florida, et cetera, et cetera. They just opened the first Salt and Straw in New York City on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Well, that got the ire of Steve Chiuso. He's a New York Post columnist. He's also a food critic. He's been at the Post since the 70s. Let me give you a little preview. The title of his story: super popular Salt and Straw has finally opened in NYC, but no one needed pastrami on rye ice cream.
Is he wrong?
I don't think he's wrong there. Let's just, we don't need to, like, I'm not weighing in on the substance of his article because his headline is spot on.
I have to agree. Sorry, go on, John.
Okay. There is no joy in pastrami on rye, where butterscotch ice cream is packed with pastrami sourced from the Carnegie Deli. The only discernible flavor I detected was mustard. He did love the sea salt with caramel ribbons ice cream.
That's
so it
a
wasn't
classic.
all bad.
Yeah.
He saved most of his ire for the seasonal Halloween list.
Okay.
Here's another one. Beware creepy crawlies at all cost. I don't know whether the candied insect fragments under the matcha ice cream were chocolate-covered crickets or toffee brittle mealworms, but the happily deceased organisms felt like they were squirming on my tongue and throat.
Come on.
They have made an ice cream with candy bugs in it. So, yeah.
They're not squirming on your tongue, dude. Come on.
What do you guys think?
I feel really weird about this article because I am not a fan of New York City and New York City snobbery. And with the exception of that mealworm thing, I think he's kind of spot on here. Like pastrami on rye ice cream, what were they thinking? And Salt and Straw is not Portland's best ice cream. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even think it's in the top 5, if I'm being honest.
Okay, can I just say something really quick? Is that I would always make a joke about Salt and Straw being like, oh yeah, the place that's like, oh, let's make some salmon ice cream. And it was a joke for just like maybe less than a year.
And then they did it.
And then they fucking made salmon ice cream. And everyone's like, yeah, they have. I was like, no.
Yeah. I'm all for inventiveness, but some things shouldn't leave the test kitchen.
Yeah. And here's the deal. Like, I know that olive oil ice cream's really good, but like, I don't know, man. Some of the flavors they've come out with feel like dares.
Yeah. Well, Claudia, I take my job really seriously here at CityCast Portland. So
No.
I took the effort to go to Salt and Straw yesterday and get this pint of Creepy Crawly's ice cream.
Yes.
Which I have not tried yet. I'm going to give it a first taste here on the show. Creepy Crawly's begins with a simple matcha ice cream for a grassy green base, and it features Don Bugito's edible insects, coconut coffee, candied mealworms, and chocolate-covered crickets.
Okay.
So,
make sure you get a cricket or a mealworm in there.
I mean, honestly, they're sort of just like crunchy chocolate bits.
Are they powdery at all? Or you know what I mean? Like,
there's like a little bit of powderiness, yeah. But I think it's more that like matcha is just not a killer ice cream flavor. It's not awful.
I mean, I have to argue, I love matcha mochi, but I've never had matcha with mealworms.
As I eat more, there is sort of like a dusty
essence
type of vibe going on with the candied insects.
Yeah.
But listeners, John just put his third spoonful in his mouth.
I know, but listeners, John can't stop eating it.
He just keeps going in.
I mean, I don't hate it.
I don't know. I mean, I think he's a little harsh in here. And there's some stuff in there too about like calling Portland like super overrated food scene or whatever. It's like big leaps there to go from one ice cream shop that isn't even our best ice cream to declaring the whole city as kind of a joke and overrated. Like, that's a bit much.
He said, Portland, a city with possibly the nation's most self-important culinary scene.
Says the guy from New York.
Says the guy from New York. So Lizzie Acker at the Oregonian took great umbrage with this. Lizzie clapped back. There is absolutely no more self-important culinary scene on the planet Earth, and honestly, probably in the entire unknowable universe, than that of New York City.
It's true. And let me tell you, the worst Mexican food, try to find me a good bowl of pho in New York, you will not find when it's cinnamon water. Like, I don't understand. And like, there's just certain cuisines they don't have that the West Coast freaking nails because of our population. Like, I know they're like, oh, you can get any, meal. I was like, I can't get a good burrito. And I'm sorry, that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
You know? Whatever. And their pizza's overrated. I said it.
Yeah.
I said it. New York pizza is soggy and overrated.
Yes.
Well, what I was going to say, our colleague Rachel Monahan has sort of put the question to readers of our newsletter, Hey Portland, to sort of weigh in on Salt and Straw and the controversy. And we've got like a lot of feedback from people and what their takes are. Our reader, Catherine, said, I think that Cuso fellow has his taste in his mouth. Someone should offer him a pittance to get himself a new personality. He's just plain rude. Which I thought was pretty good.
That's really good.
But a lot of people were also sort of, beefing with Salt and Straw in our inbox. Autumn wrote in, as a plant-based eater, I'm lucky to find an interesting assortment of seasonal flavors from them. Sometimes I'm lucky if they have one at all outside the regular menu. And when they do have a seasonal flavor for us plant-based foodies to enjoy, it's not even ice cream. It's usually a sorbet or something fruity of the likes. Then goes on to shout out Kate's, who does plant-based ice cream, which is really, really good as well.
Exclusively plant-based ice cream too, right? Like it's not just like look, we have this little corner over here. It's all plant-based.
Yeah, and Autumn wasn't the only person shouting out Kate's. KJ wrote in, Kate's for my palate, for animal rights, for the planet. Salt and Straw is so yesterday. When we know better, we do better.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not vegan, but I can't eat ice cream. It just wrecks my stomach. And the few times that I have gone to Salt and Straws is because of, people from out of town want to go check it out.
Yeah.
And I have to agree, I rarely can get anything. Because like the flavors they do have, I'm like, no, thank you.
Yeah, there are other dairy-based ice cream shops in Portland that have a much more substantial, like plant-based vegan menu at all times.
Yeah.
Shout out to Cloud City, who has like an entire case of nothing but vegan ice creams, actual ice creams. Salt and Straw is what it is. It's kind of flashy, but like, no, it's not the best ice cream in Portland, and that's why it's in New York City.
That's why it's good enough for New York.
I know. Yeah. Keep it, New York.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, at least the big cross-country discourse is about ice cream and not about our DMV voter rolls, right?
I'll take it.
I know. It's like, yeah, our ice cream is weird. Stop looking over here.
Just look away.
Look away. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and going through some of the headlines of the week. I appreciate all of our new listeners, and thank you to all of our new members. This has been kind of an exciting past couple of weeks, just realizing like how much people are actually caring about the show. It's really awesome, and we love hearing from you. If you didn't know, we always take requests. If there's anything you want us to look into, portland@citycast.fm.
She's not lying here. I had a weird request about what do the bridge operators do when they have to go to the bathroom, and they turn that into an episode. So they will answer these questions for you.
All right, man. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, Claudia.
Thanks, Claudia.
Just a note that we are taking Monday off in observance of Indigenous Peoples Day, but we'll be back in your feed on Tuesday. And also a quick correction before we head out. On yesterday's show in the events section, I incorrectly stated that the City Archives open house is happening on Sunday, and it's actually happening on Saturday. So this Saturday from 2 to 5 p.m., there will be archive tours as well as a family archives digitization station, special guest speakers, and so much more. It's one of the few times the City Archives opens its doors to the public. It's absolutely free, and it's happening on Saturday. Maybe I'll see you there. That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. Our executive producer is John Notarianni. Our producers this week are Julia Fiaioni and Francisco Kilgore. Our Hey Portland newsletter editor is Rachel Monahan, and our host is me, Claudia Meza. Original music by Jenny Conley and Steven Drizos. Additional music by Epidemic Sound and All the Kimonos. We'll be back Tuesday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.